Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another Star Wars video. Today, I've got a story for you that's going to blow your mind. So a couple of years ago, just after the Book of Boba Fett came out, I made a video breaking down every surviving clone who's still alive during and after the original trilogy. The obvious ones are Captain Rex, Boba Fett, Wolffe, until Star Wars Rebels Season 4 Gregor, and I presume also the Bad Batch. We know Omega became a rebel pilot. But in this video, I want to talk about a forgotten clone, someone who was introduced in the Star Wars Empire comic run back in 2004. This is important because I need to clarify that when this comic came out, this clone trooper was presented as the last surviving clone. This was before Revenge of the Sith, before the Clone Wars series, before the Clone Wars movie, way before Star Wars Rebels, and way before the Bad Batch came out. So this was well before Lucasfilm confirmed that there were a handful of survivors. This guy was one of the original last surviving clones, and Luke Skywalker met him. And I do have to wonder, with all of the recent canon confirming more clones having survived, do you think we'll ever see Luke Skywalker meeting Omega? Maybe in Dave Filoni's movie? But anyway, returning to the story at hand, the comic is now Legends and part of the expanded universe, so it's no longer considered Disney canon. But nonetheless, it's a remarkable story of how an abandoned clone remained undetected for 20 years. The longest surviving clone in all of Star Wars canon is Kix, and we'll be covering his story later in the video. But the clone we're focusing on today has a similarly insane story, and I hope you enjoy it. Here we go. 1 year following the Battle of Geonosis, the start of the Clone Wars in Episode 2, a Republic gunship was flying over the jungle world of Lubang Minor when separatist droid forces shot it down, and most of the clones on board died instantly. But then there was one survivor, clone trooper Abel, who would go on to remain in the jungle for 20 years. Unable to contact the Republic and unable to send an SOS, he remained stranded and detached from all of the galaxy's events for 2 decades. Until one day, the rebellion saved him, but it was by complete accident. Abel had no idea the Clone Wars had come to an end. So now we fast forward to just after A New Hope. Following the Alliance's victory at the Battle of Yavin, Luke Skywalker and Red Squadron were flying escort for a secret rebel intelligence operation on a supposedly unpopulated world. But they run into an unexpected Imperial patrol. With half the squad trapped on the ground and the secrecy of the mission in peril, things don't look like they can get any worse. But then, Luke Skywalker with Commander Nara makes an insane discovery that's about to change his life. As we saw in A New Hope, Luke had already heard about the Clone Wars and was amazed that Obi-Wan fought in them, let alone alongside Anakin, Luke's dad. But Luke was about to come face to face with an actual relic of the Clone Wars, a surviving stranded clone trooper, one who didn't fight most of the war, but was there at the start, participated in the Battle of Geonosis. Now when Luke and the other rebels arrived on Lubang Minor, they noticed a handful of graves. Abel buried his brothers the moment they crash-landed all of those years ago. But when the rebels and the Empire arrived, he was so confused. He'd never seen rebel fighters, and conversely, he didn't know what a stormtrooper was. Much in the same way Luke was confused when he saw the Phase 1 clone trooper helmet. At first, Luke assumed Abel was some kind of stormtrooper, but when they confront him, here's how the conversation goes. Abel puts his blaster up to the Red Squadron commanders. "I want an answer. Who are you?" A very primitively Jedi-trained Luke is tempted to get out his lightsaber, but he holds back, because Commander Nara recognizes the clone trooper helmet. "Take it easy. I am of Red Squadron, and this is Commander Luke Skywalker. I think there's a misunderstanding. You didn't come here with those Imperial troops, did you?" Nara looks at him closely and says, "I can tell. You've been here a while." Abel replies, "I can't be sure how long it's been. We crash-landed here less than a year after the war began. Droid fighters, they were on top of us before we could do anything. Most of my unit was killed. My best guess is I've been here for at least 20 years. And to Commander Nara, this confirms he's a clone. He loosens up a bit. He remembered the Clone Wars and says, "Wow, incredible. I saw clones when I was much younger. You're still alive. You're still here." But the clone is still confused. He thinks they're separatists. He has absolutely no idea the war came to an end, and out of the ashes of the Republic came the Empire, and the rise of Darth Sidious. "You've given me your names," he says, "but who are you? Separatists? You've got those troopers hunting you." Yes, Commander Nara replies, "but they're not clone troopers, they're stormtroopers." Abel is baffled, as if coming out of a coma. Stormtroopers? He missed so much. He didn't know about Project Warmantle and the fate of the clones. I'm not sure I understand. The rebels explain. They're tools of the Empire that controls most of the galaxy. The Separatists are long gone. We are part of the Alliance trying to restore the Republic. Are you saying we won the war? Then where did this Empire come from? Oh, you won the war, all right. And then the entire galaxy lost. The Empire is what the Republic turned into, what it was twisted into. Supreme Chancellor Palpatine made a show of how reluctant he was to accept the emergency war powers. But he'd wanted that kind of power for a long time. Under the pretense of protecting the Republic, he took control and unleashed armies and fleets. Crushing the Separatist movement was just the first step. He declared himself Emperor and put every system under his heel. Things are not how they used to be, my friend. And to make sure he'd not be challenged, he hunted down and exterminated the last threats to his power, the Jedi.
Execute Order 66.
The commander is shocked because he served the Jedi. The Jedi are gone, but they were our generals. To put the clone trooper's mind at ease, Luke ignites his lightsaber. You see, I'm a Jedi. I was trained by Ben Kenobi, though in those days he was known as Obi-Wan. Commander Nara then adds, you see, General Skywalker is one of the most important leaders, and that's when the commander pledges his allegiance to the rebellion. Abel 1707 reporting for duty. Well, Abel, we need to link up with the rest of the rebel detachment and find a way off planet. You know this terrain better than any of us. What do you suggest? Abel helps the rebels escape, and after 20 long years, he's rescued off-world. He's given a shave and a shower, and declares himself a new man. What a crazy story. A clone that was abandoned and stranded for 20 years. But if you think that's bad, how about the clone who was in stasis for 50 years? A clone who discovered the truth about Order 66, but didn't survive long enough to tell the Jedi. I'm talking about Kix. Now, Kix was someone during the end of the Clone Wars who was fascinated by the inhibitor chips. He saw how fellow clone trooper Tup executed Order 66, but it was what happened with Fives, who also came close to the truth, that spurred Kix to start his own investigation, and he discovered the truth for himself, that the biochip implanted in every clone soldier's head sent out an order to betray and kill the Jedi. But before Kix could warn anyone, he was captured by Count Dooku, who found out the clone learnt the truth. But to ensure no one else did, Dooku interrogated the clone. He was put on board the Separatist cruiser known as the Obrexter III, and on the ship he was frozen and inserted into a Cyrocycle stasis pod, where he would remain until the ship arrived on Sereno. But as the cruiser took off, the Republic ambushed it. This is where the B-1 battle droid known as B-1CC-14 took matters into his own hands, concluding the ship was in no shape to go to Sereno. So the droid launched the ship into hyperspace, and it landed on a deserted world known as Panema Terminal. For 50 years, Kix remained alive but in stasis. But then one day the Delphidian pirate Saido Ithano heard a rumor about a treasure from the days of the Clone Wars. They tracked down the ship, and they found Kix, still frozen in his pod. They unfroze him. He was startled and shell-shocked. Kix had no idea how much time had passed. He thought it was still the Clone Wars, and demanded to talk to Anakin Skywalker. But when he learnt what happened, and the time period he was living in, he agreed to join the Crimson Corsair Pirates, and his story became legend. An absolutely wild Star Wars story.